My name is Claire Miller, and the night my world broke wasn't some grand tragedy in a faraway place. It happened right inside our own living room. I was 14 when my mom died. Cancer took her faster than any of us could understand. While neighbors whispered prayers and brought casseroles, my father sat in the corner, a bottle in his hand, eyes glazed like we were strangers. That night, after we buried her, I thought maybe he would finally step up, hold us, promise we'd be okay. Instead, he staggered to his feet, muttered something about life being unfair, and walked out into the cold with his new girlfriend on his arm. And just like that, 5 kids were left staring at each other in a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, and too dangerous. Ethan, my oldest brother, was only 18, but overnight, he became our father, our mother, our shield. And I became the sister who secretly dreamed of escaping, even while pretending to hold it all together. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to have childhood ripped away in a single breath, stay with me. Because what started that night, the night we lost our mom and our dad in the same breath, shaped everything that came after. And before we go deeper, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear the rest of this story. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where the air always smelled faintly of rust and coal, even long after the factories shut down. The streets were quiet, not peaceful quiet, empty quiet like hope had packed up and moved away years before. Our house sat at the end of a cracked road, paint peeling off the porch, the mailbox leaning sideways like it had given up. We didn't have much. Some days we barely had enough to keep the lights on. But what stung worse than poverty was the way people looked at us. The Miller kids, they'd whisper. Poor things. No mother, no father worth a damn. Ethan, my oldest brother, should have been at college, chasing a future. Instead, he worked 16-hour shifts at the garage, grease permanently under his fingernails. Jack, the second oldest, fought every battle with his fists because words never seemed strong enough. Rachel, younger than me, tried to be invisible, while little Sam just clung to whoever looked strongest that day. And me? I smiled. I studied. I pretended. But every night, lying in bed, I imagined a different life. A skyline instead of smokestacks. A stage instead of silence. I wanted out. Not because I didn't love my brothers and sister, but because I couldn't stand the thought of being buried in the same broken soil that had trapped everyone else here. I told myself, one day, I'll leave. One day, I'll find a life that feels bigger than this town. I just never knew how much I'd lose, and how much I'd have to fight, to make that dream real. When people talk about the Miller family, they usually picture Ethan, my oldest brother. He was only 18 when Mom died, but overnight he became our father, our protector, the one who carried the weight no kid should ever have to carry. He never complained, never asked for thanks. But every time I looked at him, I saw the cost. Shoulders too heavy, eyes too tired, dreams quietly buried. Then there's Jack, the second oldest. Jack is fire, quick to laugh, quicker to fight. He's the kind of brother who would throw himself in front of a train for you, but also the kind who might land in jail for punching someone who looked at you wrong. People call him reckless. I call him loyal, sometimes dangerously so. Rachel, my younger sister, was always the soft one. She wanted peace, wanted love, wanted someone to take care of her. In a family like ours, softness is a risk. People used it against her, and I hated watching her break again and again under the weight of other people's cruelty. And then there's Sam, our baby brother. 8 years old, wide-eyed, innocent, clinging to hope the rest of us had long since lost. We tried to shield him, to give him a childhood even when ours had been stolen. Sam was the reason we kept pushing forward, the reason Ethan worked, the reason Jack fought, the reason I kept dreaming. 5 kids. No parents. Just us against the world. And as much as I loved them, I knew one truth I never said out loud. If I didn't find a way out, I'd drown in this broken family just like everyone else. Ethan had a letter once, a thick envelope from Penn State. He never let us read it, but I saw the look in his eyes when it came in the mail. That was his escape, his chance to leave this dying town, to be more than just another Miller kid. But after Mom's funeral, that envelope disappeared into the trash. Ethan never mentioned it again. Instead, he picked up extra shifts at the garage, came home smelling of oil and exhaustion, and started cooking dinner like he'd been doing it his whole life. I used to hear him at night, long after the rest of us were asleep. He'd sit at the kitchen table, head in his hands, whispering numbers to himself. Rent, groceries, school supplies, trying to make them fit together like puzzle pieces that never would. He was 18. He should have been chasing freedom. Instead, he was chained to us. And just when we thought things couldn't get worse, Dad came back. He stumbled into the house one Saturday afternoon, arm draped around a woman half his age, lipstick smudged across his shirt. "Kids," he slurred. "This is your new mom." The words hit like a grenade. Rachel froze, tears spilling before she could stop them. Jack exploded, shouting curses until Ethan dragged him outside. Sam hid behind me, clutching my arms so tight it hurt. I stood there, staring at the woman's smug smile, at my father's glassy eyes. He hadn't been there when Mom begged for medicine we couldn't afford. He hadn't been there when Ethan sold his future to keep us alive. And now he wanted to play family again, like none of it mattered. That night, I lay awake listening to Ethan and Jack argue in the kitchen. Ethan said, "He's still our father." Jack shot back, "No, he's a parasite." I didn't know who was right. All I knew was this. If Dad could walk away once, he'd do it again. And when he did, the only people left standing would be us. Just us. The house didn't feel like ours anymore. Dad had dumped his duffel bag in the living room, like he was moving back into a life he'd abandoned years ago. His new wife, or girlfriend, I couldn't even tell, sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if she owned the place. Ethan tried to keep the peace. He set extra plates at the dinner table, forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and said, "He's still our father." "We have to at least try." Jack nearly flipped the table. Try? Where was he when Mom was dying? Where was he when you gave up college to feed us? He doesn't get to waltz back in and play house. His fists clenched so tight I thought he'd punch a hole in the wall. Rachel cried quietly, torn between craving a parent's love and knowing it was a lie. Sam asked if we had to call her Mom, and my heart cracked in two. And me? I sat there, staring at the man who had given me half my blood, but none of his love. Part of me wanted to scream like Jack, to drive him out of the house and slam the door behind him. Another part, the part shaped by years of watching Ethan sacrifice everything, whispered that maybe, just maybe, forgiving him would make life easier. But deep down, I knew the truth. Men like my father don't come back to heal wounds. They come back because they smell something left to take. That night, lying in the dark, I asked myself a question I couldn't shake. How many times can you be abandoned by the same person before you finally learn? Life in our town was a stage, and we were the show no one wanted to watch, but everyone loved to whisper about. At the grocery store, I could hear the murmurs behind me in line. The Miller kids. Such a mess. At church, whole pews shifted away, as if we carried some kind of stain that might rub off. Rachel took it the hardest. One day she came home from school with her backpack torn, her notebooks dumped in the mud. She tried to laugh it off, but I saw the red eyes, the trembling hands. They said no one wants to be friends with a girl from a broken family, she whispered. I wanted to hold her, but all I could feel was rage. Ethan kept his head down, working longer hours, trying to prove to the town that we weren't hopeless. But respect never came. No matter how many oil changes he did, no matter how many bills he paid, to them he was just the boy raising kids that weren't his to raise. And Jack fought back the only way he knew how, with fists, with anger, with fire. One night, the police car pulled up outside our house, red and blue lights splashing against the windows. My stomach dropped as two officers stepped out, hauling Jack by the arms. His lip was split, his knuckles raw. Caught him shoplifting, one of them said flatly. Rachel burst into tears. Sam hid behind Ethan. I just stood frozen, shame and fury battling inside me. Because in that moment, the whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were headlines, proof stamped in flashing lights. The Miller kids are trouble. And I knew. Our fight to survive wasn't just against hunger or bills. It was against a town that had already decided who we were. The night Jack got arrested was the night Ethan's last bit of freedom disappeared. At the impound lot, Ethan handed over the keys to his old Chevy truck. The one thing he'd kept from Dad, the one thing that was his. That truck wasn't just metal and wheels. It was his escape plan, his proof that maybe someday he could drive out of this place. But to bail Jack out, it had to go. I'll never forget the way Ethan's hand lingered on the steering wheel before he walked away. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence screamed louder than anything. Jack stood there, head bowed, muttering apologies that sounded more like excuses. Ethan clapped him on the shoulder, heavy and tired, and said, "Don't make me choose between you and the rest of us again." That was Ethan. Never blaming, always carrying. And every time he carried, a little more of him disappeared. Back at home, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all pressing down. That's when the envelope slid under my door. My art teacher's handwriting on the front. I tore it open with shaking hands. Congratulations. Full scholarship. New York School of the Arts. I gasped, clutching the letter so tight it crumpled. This was it. My way out. My chance to escape the whispers, the pity, the endless sacrifices. A life bigger than this town. But the joy was swallowed almost instantly by guilt. How could I leave when Ethan had just given up the last piece of himself to save Jack? How could I chase my dreams when Rachel was breaking, when Sam was still a child, when our father was a ghost who only appeared to take? I pressed the letter to my chest, torn between the life I wanted and the family I couldn't abandon. That night, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because I knew what Ethan would say, what Jack would scream, what Rachel would sob. And deep down, I already knew the truth. Sometimes, even a dream feels like betrayal. I kept the scholarship letter hidden under my mattress, like a secret too dangerous to see the light. By day, I went through the motions. School, chores, helping Rachel with homework, making sure Sam brushed his teeth. By night, I lay awake, reading the letter over and over, memorizing every word until it blurred. One evening, Ethan caught me sketching by the window, the acceptance letter folded beside me. He picked it up before I could hide it. His eyes scanned the page, and for the first time in years, I saw something break in him. "You got in?" he whispered. I nodded, my throat tight. "It's a full scholarship. I could—" "Claire." His voice was soft, but sharp. "We need you here." The words cut deep. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Ethan was barely holding everything together. Jack was one mistake away from another arrest. Rachel was fragile as glass. Sam still needed bedtime stories. And Dad. Dad was just waiting to swoop in and take what little we had left. Please, Ethan said, placing the letter back in my hands. I can't do this alone. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that I didn't ask to be born into a house where childhood ended too soon, that I had dreams too, ones that didn't fit inside this broken down town. Instead, I swallowed the words, nodded, and said nothing. But that night, when everyone was asleep, I started packing in secret. A small bag under my bed, pencils, sketchbook, a pair of jeans, a photo of Mom. Each item felt like a betrayal, but also like survival. I told myself I wasn't abandoning them. I told myself I'd come back stronger, successful, able to lift us all out of this place. But deep down, I knew the truth. If I left, it wouldn't be for them. It would be for me. And that knowledge burned more than any goodbye ever could. A few days later, I stayed late after school, pretending to clean paintbrushes just so I could breathe without the weight of the house pressing down on me. That's when Miss Bennett, my art teacher, walked in. She glanced at the sketch I'd been working on, a portrait of Ethan, hunched over, his face carved by exhaustion. She studied it quietly, then looked at me. You ever think about what you'd be if you weren't always surviving? The question hit harder than she knew. I froze, brush trembling in my hand. I know about the scholarship, she continued gently. You deserve it, Claire. Don't let guilt chain you to this town. I shook my head, tears stinging. My family needs me. If I leave, I'll be abandoning them. Miss Bennett knelt so we were eye level. There's a difference between abandoning someone and saving yourself. Sometimes, the only way to help the people you love is to prove there's more out there than this place. Her words slipped past the walls I'd built around myself. For months, I'd been drowning in whispers that I was selfish for dreaming. And now, here was someone telling me that maybe my dream wasn't betrayal at all. Maybe it was hope. She pressed a bus ticket into my hand. Just in case you decide to go. That night, I lay awake staring at the ticket. For the first time, leaving didn't feel impossible. It felt inevitable. The morning I left was supposed to be quiet. I packed the little bag I'd hidden under my bed for weeks. A few clothes, my sketchbook, the bus ticket Ms. Bennett had slipped into my hand. I thought maybe I could slip out before anyone noticed. But nothing in the Miller family ever stayed quiet. As I stepped onto the porch, my father was already there, a beer in his hand, though the sun had barely risen. He squinted at the bag, then let out a laugh that sliced through the still air. Well, look at this, he drawled loud enough for the neighbors across the street to hear. The artist thinks she's too good for us. Running off to paint her dreams while the rest of us rot. Mrs. Henderson, who was sweeping her porch, paused to watch. A couple of kids on bikes slowed down, eyes wide. Heat crawled up my neck. I tried to keep walking, but Dad stepped in front of me, smirking. Go ahead, Claire. Leave. Just remember, when you fail, don't come crawling back. This family doesn't need another disappointment. The words stung worse than any slap. My fists clenched at my sides, but before I could answer, I caught sight of Ethan. He was standing at the end of the driveway, grease-stained work shirt still on, arms crossed. He didn't say a word. Didn't move. His eyes locked on mine, a storm of pride and pain. That silence broke me more than Dad's cruelty. Because I knew Ethan wanted to tell me to stay, but also knew he couldn't. And in his stillness, I heard everything. Go chase your dream. But know that it hurts me to let you go. I swallowed hard, adjusted the strap on my bag, and walked past Dad without looking back. The whispers from the neighbors followed me down the street, mingling with the echo of Ethan's silence. That was the day I learned dreams don't just cost sweat and sacrifice. Sometimes they cost the people you love most, and once you pay that price, there's no refund. New York smelled like possibility, and smoke, and sweat, and fear. The streets pulsed with life, neon lights painting the sky like permanent dawn. For the first time, I felt invisible in a way that was freeing. No one whispered Miller Kid here. No one cared where I came from. I rented a room in a crumbling walk-up with 3 other girls chasing the same dream. We slept on mattresses pushed against peeling walls, shared instant noodles, and traded stories about the futures we swore we'd grab. I told myself this was it. My life was finally beginning. At first, it even seemed true. I got an audition at a small gallery, a chance to show my sketches to someone who mattered. The curator smiled, said I had raw talent, promised introductions if I was willing to play the game. I thought the game meant hard work. I was wrong. The game meant drinks at midnight bars with men twice my age. It meant whispered propositions, hands that lingered too long on my shoulder, compliments with barbs hidden inside. I said no. Again and again, I said no. And with every refusal, doors closed, phone calls stopped. The curator who once smiled now looked through me like I was invisible. My roommates moved on, some playing the game, some leaving town altogether. Then came the betrayal. My closest friend in the city, the one I trusted, the one who promised we'd make it together, sold one of my sketches as her own. When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. This is survival, Claire. Grow up. That was the night New York stopped feeling like freedom and started feeling like another prison, just bigger and lonelier. I called Ethan. For the first time in months, I heard his voice crack. Just come home, Claire. We'll figure it out. But pride kept me silent. I couldn't admit that I had failed, that everything I'd sacrificed, my family, my dignity, Ethan's quiet faith in me, had been for nothing. When the eviction notice came, I packed my bag again. Same bag, fewer things. My sketchbook half empty, the bus ticket crumpled in my pocket. The ride back to Pennsylvania was silent except for the hum of the engine and the echo of my father's voice. When you fail, don't come crawling back. I pressed my forehead to the glass, watching the city lights fade into darkness, then into empty fields. Tears blurred the horizon. I had left to become someone. I was returning as no one. And the worst part? I didn't know if my family would even open the door. The bus hissed to a stop on Main Street, right in front of the diner where gossip was served hotter than coffee. I stepped off with my bag, lighter than when I left, heavier in shame. It didn't take long. Mrs. Henderson's sharp eyes caught me first. She leaned over to the waitress and whispered just loud enough, "Told you she'd come crawling back." Couldn't last a year out there. A few men at the counter chuckled. Every step toward home felt like walking through a gauntlet of smirks and pity. My dream of New York had crumbled, and all the town saw was proof of what they'd always believed. Millers don't make it out. When I reached our front porch, I froze. My hand hovered over the doorknob, heart pounding. What if Ethan slammed the door in my face? What if Jack laughed? What if Rachel resented me for leaving? The door opened before I could knock. Ethan stood there, grease still under his nails, eyes tired but soft. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he stepped aside and said just 2 words, "Welcome home." The relief nearly dropped me to my knees. I stumbled inside, the smell of motor oil and old wood wrapping around me like a blanket. Rachel hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. Sam clung to my waist, whispering, "Don't leave again." But Jack? He stayed in the corner, arms crossed, jaw tight. His silence said what I feared most. Forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. I unpacked my bag in the same room I'd grown up in, walls unchanged, dreams still sketched into the peeling paint. I was back where I started. But something told me the storm hadn't even begun. Home wasn't home anymore. It was a battlefield, where every silence was loaded and every word was a spark. Jack was the loudest. He came home late, smelling of beer and smoke, his knuckles raw more often than not. "Don't start with me, Ethan," he'd snap whenever my brother tried to talk sense into him. One night, he slammed his fist into the kitchen wall so hard plaster rained onto the floor. "I'm not you, okay? I'm not some martyr fixing cars until I'm dead." Rachel was the quietest, but her choices screamed louder than any fight. She started sneaking off with a man twice her age, flashing jewelry we knew she hadn't bought herself. I cornered her one night, begged her to end it. She whispered, "He says he loves me, Claire." No one else ever has. My chest ached because I understood that hunger too well. And Sam. Poor Sam. He was 12 now, not a baby anymore, but still desperate for attention. He'd sit in front of the TV alone, waiting for someone to ask about his homework, his day, his dreams. We were all too busy drowning in our own chaos to notice he was slipping through the cracks. Ethan tried to hold it all together, the way he always did. Working double shifts, paying bills, patching holes in walls and hearts alike. But even he was breaking. One night, after Jack stormed out and Rachel locked herself in her room, he sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. His voice was raw when he said, "I can't keep doing this. I can't be father, mother, warden, all at once." I sat across from him, my own chest heavy. "Then stop. Stop carrying it all. Let us help." His eyes lifted to mine, tired but fierce. "You left, Claire. You had your chance to run. Now you're back, and I need you here. No more dreams. No more New York. Just here." The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. My failure had brought me home, but my home was falling apart, and that's when the knock came. Heavy, demanding. The door swung open, and there he was, our father. Older, fatter, but the same cruel smirk curling his lips. Beside him, the same woman he'd paraded years ago, her perfume thick and sour. "Well?" he drawled, looking around at us like we were strangers. "Seems my kids are doing all right after all. About time you gave something back to your old man." Jack surged forward, fists clenched. Ethan blocked him with an arm, his face pale. Dad pulled a crumpled bill from his pocket, waving it mockingly. "Money's tight." "You wouldn't let your father starve, would you?" Rachel gasped. Sam shrank behind me. My blood boiled. "You left us," I spat. "You don't get to come back now and demand anything." He shrugged, smug. "Blood's blood, Claire. Doesn't matter what you think. You owe me." For the first time in years, Ethan's voice broke into a shout. "We don't owe you a damn thing." The room went dead silent. Jack's eyes widened. Rachel's tears spilled. Sam's hands gripped my sleeve like he was holding on for dear life. And in that silence, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about our father anymore. This was about all of us. The fractures, the resentment, the weight of years we'd never asked to carry. We weren't just fighting him. We were fighting ourselves. A few nights after Dad barged back into our lives, I overheard voices drifting from the porch. The screen door was cracked, the summer air thick, and his laugh, that smug, hollow laugh, cut through the silence. "Don't worry," he told the woman beside him, his words slurred with cheap whiskey. "They'll cave. Ethan's too soft. He'll pay up. He always does." Her voice was sharp, impatient. "And then what? You think these kids will keep handing over money forever?" Dad chuckled. "As long as I'm their father, they will. Blood's the strongest leash there is." My stomach turned. For years, I'd told myself maybe he didn't know how to love us. Maybe he was broken in ways he couldn't fix. But this wasn't brokenness. This was choice. A parasite pretending to be kin. I pushed the door open, fury burning through me. "We're not your leash. We're not your wallet. We're not your family. He sneered, unfazed. Careful, Claire. Don't forget whose blood runs in your veins. Ethan appeared behind me, his face pale. Dad, please. Let's not do this. The word please nearly shattered me. Even after everything, Ethan's heart still reached for the man who had abandoned us. He wanted so badly to believe there was something worth saving in our father, but I saw only rot. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling. He's not here for us. He never was. He's here to take. And if you give him one more inch, he'll bleed us dry. Ethan's jaw clenched, his eyes caught between loyalty and truth. For the first time, I saw him hesitate, the weight of decades of duty pressing against the reality he didn't want to face. Dad leaned back in his chair, smiling like he'd already won. And in that moment, I understood. The real battle wasn't with our father. It was with Ethan's refusal to let go of a man who never deserved his forgiveness. It happened on a stormy night, the kind where rain blurred the streetlights into smudges of gold. Sam had been at a friend's house, and when he didn't come home by dinner, we started to worry. Minutes stretched into hours. Then came the phone call. A car had skidded on wet pavement. Sam was in the hospital. We rushed there together, hearts pounding, words stuck in our throats. The sight of him, small, pale, hooked up to machines, broke something inside me. He was supposed to be the one we protected, the one who never carried the scars we did. And now, even he wasn't safe. Rachel sobbed quietly in the corner. Jack paced like a caged animal, fists clenched, muttering curses under his breath. Ethan sat beside the bed, his head bowed, shoulders shaking. For the first time, I saw my brother cry. Not silent tears, but raw, broken sobs. I failed him, Ethan whispered. I failed all of you. I sat beside him, gripping his hand. No, Ethan. You carried us when no one else would. But you can't carry everything forever. It's breaking you. It's breaking all of us. His eyes lifted to mine, red and desperate. Then what do we do? I glanced around the room, at Rachel, at Jack, at Sam lying still under the sterile glow. We stop pretending one person has to save us. We do it together. We fight for each other. We cut Dad out. We choose us, not him. Silence fell heavy, but it wasn't the old silence. The silence of shame, of wounds festering in the dark. It was a silence of recognition. Jack stopped pacing. Rachel wiped her tears. Ethan nodded slowly, gripping my hand tighter. For the first time, the Miller kids weren't 5 broken pieces clinging to survival. We were one. And in that hospital room, I realized, maybe victory doesn't always mean winning against the world. Sometimes it just means refusing to lose each other. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. We were still reeling from Sam's accident when the door creaked open. And there he was. Dad. He walked in like he belonged there, like he hadn't abandoned us 100 times before. A pack of cigarettes bulged from his shirt pocket, and his eyes scanned the room until they landed on Ethan. Heard the kid's in trouble, he muttered. Hospitals are expensive. Bet you could use some help, or maybe you could help me first. The audacity stole my breath. Sam was fighting for his life, and all he saw was an opportunity to cash in. Jack was on his feet in seconds, fists clenched. You've got to be kidding me. Rachel shook her head, tears streaming. How can you even say that right now? Ethan stood, weary but firm. For years he'd bent under the weight of duty, still calling this man Dad. But now his voice was steady. We're done. You don't get another cent. You don't get another chance. Dad scoffed, turning to me like I might be the weak link. Claire, you've always been the dreamer. You wouldn't turn your back on your own blood, would you? I looked him dead in the eye. We already have a family, and you're not part of it. For the first time, all 5 of us stood united, Ethan, Jack, Rachel, me, And even little Sam, asleep, but still the reason we fought. Dad muttered something under his breath, then stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him. And in that moment, I knew. The bond we chose was stronger than the blood we were given. After the night at the hospital, something shifted. It wasn't magic. It wasn't instant. But it was real. For the first time in years, we weren't 5 broken kids trying to survive. We were a family, choosing each other instead of carrying the ghosts of what we'd lost. Ethan finally allowed himself to dream again. With Jack by his side, he opened a small garage. Nothing fancy, just 2 bays and a hand-painted sign. But when I watched them work together, grease on their hands, laughter breaking through years of bitterness, I saw what healing looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but possible. Rachel walked away from the man who had been stringing her along. I remember her tearing up the necklace he'd given her, her hands trembling but her voice steady. I deserve better. For the first time, she believed it. And me? I went back to the cracked-walled high school where I used to sketch in secret. This time, I wasn't a student hiding dreams under my mattress. I was a teacher with keys in my pocket and kids waiting for me in a dusty classroom. I started an art program for children who'd been told, like I once was, that dreams don't belong to families like ours. The first time one of my students held up a sketch and whispered, "Do you think I'm any good?" I smiled, remembering Miss Bennett's words. "Yes," I told her. "More than you know." At night, when the town was quiet, I'd walk past the diner, the grocery store, the church, the same places where whispers once cut me like knives. People still looked, still whispered, but it didn't matter anymore. Because now, when they said, "the Miller kids," I didn't hear pity or scandal. I heard survival. I heard strength. I heard family. And I realized, maybe we hadn't escaped the town, but we had escaped the curse it tried to put on us. It was months later when he came back, thinner, older, the swagger gone from his step. He stood outside the art classroom as the kids spilled out, clutching their sketches, laughing in ways I never had at their age. When the hallway emptied, he stepped inside. His voice was rough, but softer than I remembered. "Claire, I didn't come for money. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." For a moment I froze. All the years of hurt, all the nights of hunger, all the times Ethan gave up his life because Dad wouldn't, they crowded around me like ghosts. A part of me, the child still buried inside, wanted to believe him, wanted to finally hear the words I'd been starving for. But then I looked at the kids' drawings taped to the walls, at the classroom I had built from nothing, at the life I had carved out of pain, and I realized something. I didn't need his apology to be whole. I folded my arms, steadying my voice. "I don't hate you. But I don't need you either. Whatever forgiveness I had to give, I already gave to myself." His eyes flickered, wet and desperate. He nodded once, then walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall until they vanished. I didn't chase him. For the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. When I look back now, it feels like my life split in two. The first life was the one I thought I had to live. The obedient daughter, the invisible sister, the girl who believed survival meant silence. That life ended the night Mom died and Dad chose a bottle over his children. The second life was forged in the wreckage, messy, painful, stitched together with sacrifice and scars. It was nights of hunger, mornings of shame, and dreams that felt too heavy to carry. But it was also Ethan's steady hands, Jack's reckless loyalty, Rachel's quiet hope, and Sam's laughter that refused to die. I used to think happiness meant escape, a skyline instead of smokestacks, a stage instead of silence. But what I've learned is this: happiness isn't running away. It's learning that even in the ugliest soil, something strong can grow. Family isn't about perfection. It's not about flawless parents or easy love. Family is about choosing each other, again and again, even when the world whispers you're not worth saving. So if you've ever felt like the odds were stacked against you, if you've ever been told you're too broken, too poor, too small to matter, remember this: your story isn't written by the people who abandoned you. It's written by the people who stayed. And sometimes, that person has to be you. These days, my life is quieter. Not empty quiet like the town I grew up in, but the kind of quiet that feels earned. Every afternoon, I watch my students crowd into the little classroom with their paint-stained hands and wild ideas. They laugh, they argue, they dream out loud. And when they hold up their sketches, asking if they're good enough, I see myself in their eyes. The girl who once hid her drawings under the bed because she was too afraid to hope. I tell them the truth. Yes, you're more than good enough after they leave. I sometimes sit alone, sunlight spilling across the desks, and think about the family that raised me. We weren't perfect. We were loud, broken, stubborn, but we were ours, and that was enough. I trace my fingers over Mom's bracelet, now hanging framed above my desk. It doesn't feel like a chain anymore. It feels like a torch, lighting the path I never thought I'd find. And here's what I want you to remember. You don't need perfect beginnings to build a meaningful ending. You just need the courage to keep standing, even when the world tells you to sit down. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because there are more stories like mine, and maybe even like yours, that deserve to be heard.